And I can imagine what I was listening to when I was in my mother's womb. And it sounded something like this. Just to remind you, that's right. You see, there are many drums, but they also carry frequencies. And not every frequency connects with the body. Most of the noise that we hear is basically that, noise. The silent killer, noise pollution. But that first sound that was nurturing that child, that was safe, because all these other frequencies, the body annuates, most of these frequencies, doesn't allow to penetrate inside. But this sound that you're listening to, the frequency of the heartbeat makes a big difference when we understand what we're listening to. And that's where the healing begins. That inner thing that's inside of us that has been kind of oppressed, and we're kind of like conditioned for the noise. But by just understanding our drum, the ancestral rhythms that are kind of coded through the rhythm, the tones that we hear in the drums are always talking to the body. And some of these rhythms are what we call, or what I call sympathetic rhythms. Not every rhythm is making that connection with the body, but some is. And this particular frequency, along with the Yuba rhythm, it's really, before Bomba came to Puerto Rico, this rhythm existed, is my point. And it had a different message, and it talked directly with the heartbeat. In Puerto Rico, we call it, with Bomba, we call it Yuba, but as we go around the world, the same pattern, the same rhythm, you may be familiar with it because it's really the rhythm of the heartbeat. So it's our humanity. It's beyond a dance, beyond a song. It's a real connection that unites us and connects us. And the more we understand it, the more we connect. It's that simple. So now that you know you're listening to yourself, feels good, doesn't it?
All right, can we give it up? Gracias, Dr. Drum. just a little bit about Dr. Drum here. He is a self-made dramologist and ambassador of sympathetic frequencies that are rooted in ancestral rhythms of drumming and healing, and from right here in El Barrio. So thank you in a time when our communities need some healing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Saludos. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cynthia Carrion, the Director of Community and Government Affairs here at el Museo del Barrio. So welcome. Since its founding in 1969, El Museo has been a place of community, culture, and activism, and tonight's gathering continues that legacy. El Museo was born at the heart of political activism in East Harlem, alongside movements like the Young Lords, who championed cultural pride and social justice. Together, they pursued forward a vision of community self-determination and dignity that still inspires us today. In that same spirit, our theme for the 48th year annual Three Kings Parade will be Pa'lante, siempre pa'lante, forward, always forward. So hope you'll come back for January 6th, right? And so tonight we gather to honor three extraordinary leaders. Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala. Can I? Council Member Rafael Salamanca Jr. and former Council Member Carlina Rivera. Each of them has been more than a representative. They have been champions. They stood with our communities through the darkest days of COVID. They opened doors for asylum seekers when others closed them. And they continued to fight for affordability, dignity, and justice in a city that too often feels out of reach for far too many families. They remind us that representation matters and that courage and public service can change lives. On behalf of el Museo del Barrio, we thank you for showing what it means to lead with conviction and corazón. This evening would not be possible without our partners, MirRam Group, the Latinx Consortium of New York, LxNY, and the Hispanic Federation. Before we close, we also want to invite you to our exhibitions, Hangueando, Recent Acquisitions, 2021 to 2025, and Coco Fusco, Tomorrow I Will Become an Island. All right, and now to guide us to tonight's conversation, we are fortunate to have Juan Manuel Benítez, a trusted voice in New York journalism. For over 2 decades, he has brought clarity and depth to stories that shape our city. As the former anchor of New York One and host of Pura Politica, he is known not only for his sharp questions, but for his deep commitment to uplifting Latine voices and issues. We could not imagine a better person for this dialogue. And also to share, he has a new podcast, Juan Manuel Benítez Wants to Know. So we're excited to want to know what we're going to learn today. So if we can have Juan Manuel Benítez come up to the stage. And then we will also invite to the stage our first Latina Deputy Speaker, Diana Ayala, right here for District 8. We also have Council Member Rafael Salamanca Jr., District 17, the South Bronx, and Chair of Land Use. And former Council Member for District 2 and Cultural Affairs Chair, who is now CEO of the New York State Association for Affordable Housing, Carlina Rivera. Leave it to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We're going to ask some questions to our guests. They're leaving the City Council. One of them already left. And we're also going to read some of the audience questions. So make sure to fill out the cards that you can pass around to El Museo's staff, and then they'll bring them in, and we'll ask them at the end. But hopefully we're going to have a really interesting conversation. And I know that some of you, we've spoken many times, all of you, we've spoken many times in all these years. And I want to talk about the legacy. I want to start with the legacy that you guys are leaving and what is the proudest thing you've done during your time at the City Council. And Carlina, since you already left.
I've already reflected quite a bit, I guess. Gosh, legacy is such a funny thing. It feels so much larger than you as a person. But you can't help but think about it, especially as you come to the end. And I'm sure that you all are thinking quite a bit about it right now. And when I knew that it was my time, I was thinking, what do I need to wrap up? What do I need to get done? But I knew the things that I was really proud of. I think one thing that we all happen to be very, very proud Puerto Ricans on this stage. And so we have been unapologetically advocating for recognition of, the population here, our community here, but also, back in Puerto Rico. And we try to do that many, many ways, whether that's supporting El Museo. I supported what is the ongoing transformation renovation of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. That was a proud moment for me personally, but also culturally. And the other cultural investments that I was able to make, really a lot before I became the cultural chair. But being able to invest in these spaces that I know are so important to our own identity and preservation as New Yorkers as well. But I would say some of the things that I've been most proud of are, we really try to put housing at the forefront of our time in the council, and Ralph could talk a lot about that. And Diana too, we've all really tried, as difficult as it is. I really, really fought hard to make sure that we were fully funding reproductive justice, abortion care, really trying to invest in my own community. We all get to represent where we grew up, where we were born and raised. And so the full renovation of East River Park, which was very, very, very controversial. Civic Hall, which is this landmark workforce development center right on 14th Street, really trying to create good jobs there for our people because we are very underrepresented in tech and in that workforce industry. And I've passed a lot of good legislation. I mean, I have this really good bill that I think about whenever I'm riding a bike. And it's a bill where you just have to make sure that when there's street work or construction that there's an alternative bike lane. I know a lot of people hate talking about bike lanes, and we bring up parking, and it gets very serious. But I do think things like that in terms of our own quality of life and how we can live and move better in the city, like really making sure that we have reduced fare metro cards. There were so many things that we were able to do. So I would say, my legacy is that I was a daughter of my district, that I was able to bring like unprecedented investment, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. And Rafael, I don't know if you're going to be talking also about housing when it comes to legacy, because you've chaired a very key committee, a very powerful committee when it comes to housing construction. And is that what you think your legacy has been in that area, or?
Well, first, thank you for having me here and having this opportunity in this forum to speak about the work that we've done the last in this time in the council. Many folks can think that my legacy will be the amount of housing that I was able to approve in my council district. In my time in the council, I've been able to approve over 10,000 units of 100% affordable housing. And one of my proudest moments while we were approving this housing was one of the bills that I passed, which is called a 15% homeless set-aside. That will require every developer, if they're building housing in the city of New York, and if it's $1 of city subsidies, they have to set aside 15% of their units for homeless families that are ready for independent living. And, when we're talking about the South Bronx, we're talking about one of the poorest districts that there is in the city of New York. I have over 60 homeless shelters in my council district. Many of them that were there when I came and I took over. And what we realized were that there's a lot of working families that are in these homeless shelters that are ready for independent living. We just got to give them that opportunity. And that bill that I was able to pass, and you compound that with the 10,000 units of housing we were able to approve, we're giving families another opportunity, another shot. But to me, one of my proudest moments is to go through this journey with my son by my side, my 11-year-old son. And in the time that I've been in the council, I've been able to bring over $400 million of capital dollars to my district alone. See, I'm born and raised in my district, in my community. I lived down the block from my former elementary school. And when I became elected in 2016, like every elected official, and I'll give you some advice, when you become an elected official, you visit every graduation you can. And so when I went back to my elementary school in 2016 to visit CS 150, I realized that it was just as hot then as it was in 1990 when I graduated from that elementary school. So I utilized the power of the budget, gave them $1 million so that they can put an air conditioning unit in their auditorium. Then I went across the street to the playground that they had. And the playground was just as bad as it was in 2016 as it was in 1990. Gave them another $1.5 million. They redid their playgrounds, all while Aiden was by my side. But finally, one of my greatest moments I can say was the fact that I had 2 jails in my district and I was able to shut them down. The Spofford Juvenile Detention Center, which was there for over 50 years. Mayor Eric Adams was held there for a day. Mike Tyson was held there for a day. We were able to shut it down, knock it down, and build 900 units of housing. And just recently, I was able to shut down the barge in Hunts Point, the Vernon C. Banks Center, which is a floating jail that we've had there for over 30 years. And in 30 days, I'm going to be there, and we're going to barge that jail out of the water, and we're going to give that land back to the community.
Diana, what was your
I don't know.
proudest moment or legacy? Or
I think that my legacy will be written and rewritten, right? Is everybody's interpretation of what my time in office looked like. But I think there are a lot of moments that I'm obviously really proud of. And I would just want to share that for the 3 of us. When Carlina and I came into the council, we were the only 2 Latina women in the city council. And Ralph was one of just a handful of men, Latino men on that body. And, you know, the fact that we've come such a long way is a testament to, you know, the work that we have done and really trying to recruit people that look like us, that look like the communities they represent, to run for public office, to give them that confidence and say, like, you can do this. If I can do this, you can definitely do this. And, you know, we ran it in a time that was very difficult because, you know, we had the COVID pandemic that kind of cheated us, if you will, out of a couple of years in office, but it also gifted us with a different perspective and a different way of doing things. We also had the, you know, the asylum seeker crisis during our tenure. And so I feel like most of the time, you know, we spent a lot of time just trying to fix things and making sure that food was available everywhere. And, you know, Ralph and I did a whole bunch of food distributions. He has the food. He knows where it is. He has the hookup. But he was really helpful, you know, but being able to be in those spaces doing the work that we were doing in that time, you know, was really meaningful to me. But I think that one of the things that I'm the most proudest of, or that gives me the greatest satisfaction, is not only the work that I've done around like the mental health stuff and the opioid crisis, which are very near and dear to my heart, but when I go to a space, and I went to a school in the Bronx not that long ago, and there was a little girl waiting for us in the front of, you know, she was a chaperone, and she was so excited when I walked in there, because they were doing research about me, and she was just so happy, and I'm like, it was inspiring, because to be able to inspire little girls, right, to consider this as an option, and to feel that they feel proud to see somebody that looks like them, that's representative of their community in the city council, is really something that you just can't even describe in words.
I think it's really interesting that you say now that you tell people, if I could do it, you can do it. Because I wanted to go back 8 years ago when you first ran for the seat. I know that it took a lot of convincing for you to really believe that you could be a councilwoman. Can you talk about that?
I think, I mean, I still do. I don't, not as often as, before, but, we all suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? And even though I dedicated most of my life to the social services field, this is what I love, is what I'm really passionate about. When I started working for my predecessor, Melissa Mark-Viverito, I was with her for almost 12 years because she actually benefited from a third term. And I did everything in that office. Like, I was the director of constituent services, senior services. I started organizing housing, and I guess that she saw in me the leadership ability, but also the love for the community that she wanted someone who succeeded her to have. And so she asked me if I would run, and I said, absolutely not. You're crazy. And she's like, no, I think you would be great. And I looked at like, you look at yourself, and I'm like, I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I don't speak, right, with the same words that, these more educated council members that I know, or these elected officials, speak. I don't dress like them. I don't live like them. I don't have any money. I don't have any friends that have money. And I just did not, that was the perception, right? That's what we're projecting to the public, that this is what a public official, should look like. And so those didn't meet any of, the standards that I held myself to. It didn't look like me, didn't feel like me. And I knew that I could do the work because I had been doing the work. But I was afraid, I think, of like what people would say about me, that I did not belong in those spaces. And it took me a minute to kind of create, to get the confidence that I needed to be able to do it. And I'm gonna tell you something, really interestingly enough, having felt all of that, I mean, I would get like literally sick the night before I would do like a, forum. And many times I sit in a room and I'm probably one of the smartest people in that room. And you know why? Not because I went to an Ivy League school, but because I've lived through all of the issues that I represent. And so there's nothing in a book. And so I look around sometimes and I'm like, wow, I really needed to be here. Like, I really, really needed to be here. And so I'm really proud of myself for taking that leap of faith, but it wasn't easy. It's not easy for women to run. It's not easy for women of color to run. And for people in our communities, we have council member colleagues that will raise money, like in 3 days, they have $30,000. In 3 days, I might have 300, because we don't come from communities of, where there's a lot of money. So it's very difficult, but I'm really proud of myself for having taken that leap, because I think when I look at my daughter and I look at my granddaughters, I want them to say, I was scared, but I did it anyway.
And Rafael, looking back 8 years ago, how was it, that moment that you decided to run for the city council?
I bet you it was completely different. Go ahead, Ralph.
And also,
be honest.
Also, it was different with the money. You were really good at raising money.
So I, prior to being a council member, I was a district manager of my local community board. But prior to that, I was a healthcare administrator. But I was a community board member. Then there was a vacancy in 2010. I applied, and the board selected me to be their district manager. And for 5.5 years, close to 6 years, my focus was addressing the quality of life issues in the Hunts Point and Longwood community. Tackling illegal businesses, tackling businesses that were bringing in crime and prostitution and drugs to the community. And also, at that time, I came in a time as a district manager where there was many empty, vacant lots, and they were starting to come in with ideas to rebuild the South Bronx. My predecessor resigned from her seat at the end of 2015, and in 2016 there was a special election in March. But what I did when I was a district manager, the first thing that I did was that I met with all my elected officials to see what are their priorities and how we can work together hand in hand. And I developed relationships with all of my elected officials in my district. And so when my predecessor decided to step down, I was already.
And that was a dynasty, a political dynasty.
That was a
right?
political dynasty. I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and I immediately got the support of my local elected officials. But I was getting ready for that 2017 election, quite frankly. And I won that election in February 2016. I had another election in September of 2016. Then I had another election in September of 2017. Then I had another primary in September of 2021, and then I had another one. Well, there was another election in September of 2023. And so for me, it was constant fundraising because I have another election, I have another election, I have another election. And I was blessed that my dad worked in the Hunts Point produce market for 18 years. He was a Teamsters Local 202, and then when I came in as a district manager, I represented that area. So I had relationships with many businesses, and they saw the work that I did and how I cleaned up Hunts Point. And so when I decided to throw my hat in the ring, they wanted to be supportive. And so I'm blessed that I had that to help me. And I shared, I helped all my colleagues, whenever they called and they said, like, I endorsed Diana Ayala,
He was one of only 2 council members.
in the Bronx, right? Because county went with another elected official, and I said, no, I'm gonna back Diana,
He loves me.
and I do, and so that was really how I got there and the work that I was done. But in terms of my advice in my time in the council is, if you're deciding that you want to run for office, you have to take that leap. Make sure you take that leap. I was blessed to have the support of my family and my friends, and they believed in me and they believed in the work that I did prior to being elected, and I was extremely passionate about that work. But most importantly, being born and raised in this community, I just felt that my community was so disenfranchised. It was ignored for years. And I go back to that air conditioner in my elementary school. It just gives you that prime example of a kid born and raised in a community. It's hot. My sister graduated from that elementary school 3 years after that. It was extremely hot then. I come back as a council member, and it's extremely hot, meaning the individuals that were there representing us were not paying attention to the local, hyper-local issues that affect your everyday life. And if you're telling me what my legacy is, that's something that I'm very proud of. Addressing those small, hyper-local issues that many people think are not important, but affect you every day.
Just for those who didn't know, your predecessor was Maria del Carmen Arroyo, if I remember correctly. Okay, great. And we don't have to talk about that. And you already alluded to that. I just wanted to clarify for people who might be wondering who your predecessor was. And Carlina, how was it? How did you get there? Like, how was that decision of running for the city council?
I think there's like a statistic out there that women have to be asked like 9 times before they decide to run. And I was definitely asked at least that many times by the people in my community. And I had 100 reasons why I shouldn't run. I liked the job I had. At the time, I was doing eviction prevention and social services and working with older adults, and that to me was the most important thing for me to do in that moment for my community. And I didn't really have any money, I was just, like check to check, like everybody else. And I was happy and I was healthy. And so finally deciding to run, my predecessor, who was Councilmember Rosie Mendez, she asked me to go to breakfast, and she sat me down, and she was like, you need to stop whatever's going on in your head. You need to get out, and you need to run. And I was like, well, she said, no, really, people want you to do it. You have the experience. Why don't you try legislation? You know this constituent service piece. Try the budget and the legislative part. See if you like it. If you hate it, I'll leave you alone. So I tried it. I really liked it. I got to meet some very cool people on the way. And so I decided to run. I started raising money very early. And I just knew that it would take me a long time to get the money because it was going to come in 10 peso, $10 at a time. And I remember at one point I had $27 was the average donation I was getting. I felt like the Puerto Rican, like Bernie Sanders. I was like, this is it. I got the people behind me. I had the most individual donations of like any council member. This is me keeping track of like my accomplishments, just so I could feel better that I could be the one to get there, that I was worthy of this post, of this honor. And then I crushed all the other people in the race. It looked, to me, I couldn't believe that I won by that much, but I was intense about it. Like 7,000 signatures. Who gets 7,000 signatures? You need 500. So it was that type of thinking where I thought, like, I really have to prove myself that I'm gonna get there. And I've been intense ever since, and I think it's benefited me greatly. And I do tell people to run. I tell them, if no one's told you, I'm telling you. And then someone else will have to tell that person 5 more times, I'm sure. But I do try to encourage people to run who don't think maybe it's for them.
So have you had the same experience, or have you done the same with the person most likely to take that seat? We know that the Democratic nominee will become basically in your district, heavily Democratic. So have you done the same with the person who is going to be coming after you?
No.
And why not? And why not?
All right, so the person who's going to succeed me is an assembly member. And so, his name's Harvey Epstein. I want to make sure I don't say the wrong name from the SNL skit. His name's Harvey Epstein. He's a wonderful assembly member. He's very, social justice oriented, good person. He's lived in the neighborhood a long time. No, I didn't sit him down. I didn't give him the pep talk. He didn't need it. He's been wanting to be an elected official for a long, long time. I think he'll admit that to anyone. He wanted to be the council member when Rosie was in her second term, and then, you probably all know this, but they got the third term under Bloomberg, which was such an interesting development at the time. So he's always wanted it, and he's well known, and I think he'll serve our community really, really well. It's a loss of a Latino seat in the city council, even though we've grown, as Diana mentioned. So, I'm very much, a lot of us are very much, very, very honest with him. There are things that need to be upheld. There are also expectations in my district. Margarita Lopez, Rosie Mendez, Carlina Rivera. I'm like, you need to get some Spanish-speaking people in your office because the doñas are coming in and they need support. So those are the kinds of the honest conversations that I've had with him.
Was he the candidate you wanted to succeed you?
I knew he would do a good job. I was hoping that there would be a woman candidate who would emerge, specifically a woman of color who would emerge and be able to run, but he built a really good campaign and he earned it.
Okay. How about you, Rafael, with the person who is going to succeed you?
So the person who's going to succeed me, his name is Justin Sanchez. I did endorse someone else in the race, but he didn't win. It happens. And I've known Justin. Justin actually worked in my office many years ago for a couple of months before he went on to work for then Bronxborough President Ruben Diaz Jr. And so I've had many conversations with Justin, and after he won, just about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, we met. We were scheduled for 45 minutes. We were together for 2 hours. I drove him around my district to show him key areas, projects that I am working on that he's going to be responsible for ensuring that they finish. Especially my playground, something that I'm extremely proud of. That I can tell you. Is that about 85 to 90% of my playgrounds in my council district have been redone while I've been in the council. And that's just because I know playgrounds that have been ignored for years. And, having 8 and 11 years old, throughout that time until you got to 11, having to take them to parks, seeing the disinvestment, seeing, hey, don't go down that slide. That slide has a sharp edge and you're going to get cut there, right? And so knowing, all right, I have to do something to bring change and redevelop that park. I have the third largest nitro portfolio in the city of New York. Diana, I think you have the number one, right? And Darlene Mealing has the second. I have the third largest portfolio. We'll count after this. We'll count. But so I was able to take Justin and drive him around and show him areas where development or projects have begun, or where I've allocated funding and projects have not begun. And I want to ensure that he keeps track of it, because sometimes city agencies, they push it to the side. It's not their priority. If you're not knocking on their door and saying, hey, I gave you this money, what's going on? And you know, and drove him around to areas where where I have ideas that I have been able to fulfill. You know, Justin and I have a great relationship. I've extended myself to him to guide him through this process when he takes office. And I gave him advice. You know, there are going to be times, the people that you're going to meet in the council who are your friends today and they backstab you the next day. And give him those examples of those experiences that I've dealt with, and just so that he can be prepared as to how he's going to deal with some of those individuals. But I'm confident that, you know, Justin has the energy, he's excited, and I'm confident that he is going to do a good job, and I'm going to be there by his side whenever he needs me to ensure that he gets the best advice that I can give him. Because I live there and my family lives in that community, and I want to make sure that it's taken care of. Okay,
and Diana, the person who's going to succeed you, is she here?
Yes, she is. She's sitting right there.
I mean, she still needs to win an election, though.
She's too much. She's too much. No va a ser igual que yo, pero, you know. No. I love her to death. She and I have known each other for over 20 years. Well, close to 20 years now, and we both started working at Melissa Mark Viverito's office when she was newly elected towards the latter end of her first year. I did seniors and Elsie did youth, and oftentimes she would be crying because she couldn't help constituents when they would come in. She was very sensitive, but very good at her job. Then she left and she came back. We convinced her to come back and to consider running. And like Carlina said, it was not easy to convince her because she's not an elected official, right? None of us were elected officials. She's born and raised here in the district, has worked here her entire life. And is just a good person. And for me, you know, then I understood like why, you know, and people say, well, that's not your seat. You don't get to decide who gets to keep it. And I'm like, I don't. The seat does not belong to us. And I tell Elsie this, and I tell this to my colleagues. I'm like, the voters will decide whose seat it is. But I will be damned if I don't put an effort into making sure that the next person or the person that I back is not going to have the best interests of this community, that is not running just because they want to be an elected official. They're not running because they want to run for, you know, the assembly, you know, in the following year, or the state senate. No, I ran, and she ran because we love this community, both parts. We have this very unique district because it's broken up into two parts, the East Harlem and the South Bronx. And when the census came around and they would redistricting, people were like, well, this is your opportunity to get out of the Bronx. And actually, Carmen de la Rosa wanted to go in the Bronx. You could only have one member that goes into the adjacent borough, and I was like, absolutely not, Carmen. Like, I'm sorry for you, but no, because I see so many similarities in both parts of the district, and yet there are so many very, you know, distinct differences. And Elsie gets it. Like, she understood that. You know, she knew the people already. She knew all of the projects. She knew the challenges. And she may see them a little differently than I do, but fundamentally, I think that we share the same moral compass in terms of you have to treat people with respect, right? When people come into this office, it's not our office, this is their office. You have to make them feel welcome. You have to make sure that you have the tools that they need, you know, to overcome whatever situation they're going through. You need to be able to fight vigorously for those dollars that are not coming into your community. And so I'm really excited about an Elsie, you know, candidacy. Well, not candidacy because she's already been, you know, elected in the primary, but I know that she's going to be like, you know, she's going to be fantastic. And that for me it meant so much because I'm leaving, and you get a little bit of melancholia, right, when you're leaving. It's sad because you love these people so much. And the love is reciprocal. Like they, I have viejitos that are like, Diana, por favor, no, Elsie, que sí, pero que Diana se va. And I'm like, pero yo vivo aquí todavía. I'm not going anywhere. I still live here. You're gonna see me in the supermarket, and I'll be in Elsie's house, office all the time. I'm gonna stay with the keys. Don't worry. But to know that you could hand over those keys and leave and walk con una tranquilidad that you know that this person is going to do the best job possible is the biggest gift that I could give this community. And I think that that is what we have in LC.
Okay. At some point tonight, we'll talk about what you're doing in the future. We know what you're doing already, but let's talk about Mayor Eric Adams.
I was waiting for the vote.
So, I'm sure you have a lot of things to say. Now you're leaving, so this is the best moment to talk to elected officials.
That's
They're
what
leaving the
people
office.
say, you're leaving, but it's
I've been honest the whole time. It doesn't matter. You can ask me anything.
So I interviewed for my podcast a few days ago. I interviewed Mayor Eric Adams, and he's extremely upset because he feels that he's being unfairly attacked, and that now it's really hard for him to recover from that. He's polling really low, at 9%.
worse than Sliwa.
Yeah, worse than Curtis Lewa. And, but he thinks that the media is portraying him not in an accurate way, that there are narratives out there because of the federal indictment that went nowhere. But at the end of the day, let's be honest. He ran on a platform of a safer New York City. And if you look at it, the numbers are down when it comes to crime in the city. He ran on a platform of a cleaner city. And even though we still have a lot of challenges, I think objectively we can say that the city is a little cleaner. Maybe we have to thank Jessica Tisch for both things and not Mayor Eric Adams. But he spoke his mind during the interview. He tried to make the point. Every person who was seeing the interview, in the comments that I get online on YouTube or people that I see on the street, they tell me he's not credible. Like, they don't believe what he's saying. Why do you think Eric Adams has such a credibility problem right now that nobody believes what or nobody's willing to buy what he's selling? Diana?
Why are you picking on me?
I mean, I'm sure out of the three of you...
he's arrogant. The thing is that he's arrogant, and he walked into City Hall with a chip on his shoulder, even towards those of us that did support him initially, and he knew more than everybody else, and he was not going to be told how to run the city. It was his city. Those were his agencies, and they were going to abide by whatever rules he set forth. And if he didn't like you as a member, then they were not going to work with you. This was, unprovoked. It's been a very difficult, challenging, time with this administration. There were issues where, and I get it because, and I said this to him actually not that long ago. We had a delegation meeting, and he wanted to hear why we were not supporting him. And I said, I grew up in the hood too, and I know. If you've ever dreamt about winning the lottery, you're like, what am I gonna do if I win? Pues mira, this one needs a house, the other one needs to pay their bills, the other one, mira, needs a kidney, whatever. You're thinking about ways that you're gonna help your community. And so I think that when he won, it was an opportunity for him to also help, right, those people that were the closest to him. And I get that, because we all wanna do that. But he didn't have good judgment. He picked a lot of really bad people that had records, criminal records, were under investigation, had, real problems. And so if he did that and he didn't know, then okay. But then when it was brought up to him, he was very defensive and very adamant that this was his team and you had to eat it whether you wanted it or not. And so, I think that arrogance has been his demise. That loyalty has come to bite him, in the what. And I think that, the fact that he has been so blatantly disrespectful of most of us it hasn't been helpful. It really hasn't been helpful. I've been a very vocal critic, and I'm one of those people that if I think you're doing something right, whether I like you or I don't like you, I'm going to give you your props. I'm going to say this is where you're doing really well. But it was one thing after the other. I mean, I remember one of my first incidents. We had a hire in the Bronx of a superintendent that was accused of sexual misconduct somewhere else, and they relieved them from over there and sent them to us in the middle of the switch, right, when the new mayor comes in. And I said, well, I don't know what he did or didn't do. Apparently, he wasn't arrested because it wasn't criminal, right? But there was a civil investigation. I said, I wasn't there. I don't know what this guy did or didn't do. But what I do know is that I think it would have been better if we waited until the investigation the civil case was concluded before we made the hire, right? Because then it'll allow us to learn more. And they said to me, well, yeah, we were aware of it. It was not enough to disqualify him. We didn't really care about that. And I said, wow, well, that tells me a lot about, who you care about. And that's the type of interaction that we've had. And yeah, the streets are cleaner in a lot of neighborhoods. They're not cleaner here. I have a huge opioid crisis, and I have absolutely no help. I have my staff on 116th Street this whole week, the week before, because it feels so unsafe there for just regular people, community people that are coming and going to work. And he has not moved a single finger to help me, even though they know. I had to create a law to buy back syringes because his agencies refuse to engage and to be helpful in coming up with strategies to help these individuals. I mean, I can go on and on about all of the things that he has not done by this community, and that really bothers me because I'm the elected official that, I oversee the local stuff, but this is his constituency as well, right? He's also responsible for the people that live here, whether he likes me or not. He still has a responsibility to make sure that he doesn't not living in an apartment on public housing that is infested with mold, and go home to Gracie Mansion every night and think, well, you know what? We're gonna wait 10 years until we go rat-packed, and it's fine. And in the meantime, these people, black and brown people, are living in the worst public health crisis of our lifetime, and everybody's like this. And I just can't support that, and I think a lot of people have seen through him, and they don't support him as well for those same reasons. I'm very honest, I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry.
Try to follow that act, Rafael.
No, it's
He has a completely different relationship, that's fine.
I do. To be honest with me, I came in a year and a half before Diana and Carlina came in. And when I came in, my relationship with Bill de Blasio, in the beginning, it was a honeymoon relationship. It went well. But then I felt that the city agencies and the folks that he had there were totally ignoring my community. It was under Bill de Blasio that my district really got flooded with homeless shelters in my district. And it took me screaming and hollering at the DHS commissioner in the chambers, screaming at him at every hearing as to why is it that you continue to look at my district in the South Bronx and Diana and Althea to house homeless shelters, but yet you'll have other districts. And then it was Mark Jonai. Now it's and then it was Margin, Councilman Marmorato, and Riverdale. Why are you ignoring those communities? And then my other issue with them, the mayor, de Blasio, was, yes, I'm building all this housing, but many of the programs that you're putting in are 30 to 40% homeless set aside. I'm willing to do a set aside, but why is it so high? I want to house people in my community. And why is it that Danique Miller in Queens is negotiating only 3% of a homeless set aside? That's where my 15% homeless set aside bill came about, which he pushed back for 2 years. And they were screaming and hollering till one day Speaker Corey Johnson says, we're going to get this bill passed. Now, in terms of this current administration, no, I don't not agree on everything. But I can tell you that this mayor has been good to my community. when he was running for mayor, he came to my district, and I did a walkthrough. I took him to the Vernon C. Bain Center, the barge in Hunts Point. I said, Mr. Mayor, this jail has been here since 1990. It was ordered through then Mayor Ed Koch in the late 80s, and then David Dinkins came in, and that's when the jail was delivered, and told our community this jail was going to be here for a temporary basis. Well, 30-something years later, that jail is still here. 30-something years is not a temporary thing. And so he said, Salamanca, the first 100 days, I'm gonna shut this down, and I'm gonna get rid of this barge. Well, it took him 3 years, right? But he got it done. When he came in, I drove him around Hunts Point, and I drove him to the produce market, where they need, 70% of your food, produce, fish, and meat, comes from the Hunts Point produce market. I can assure you that, right? And they hire locally, and it's good union jobs. My dad came from Puerto Rico at 17 years old. He went to 10th grade. He did not finish anything else other than that. He worked in different factories until he got that job. And that job is what kept us alive, paid for the roof, paid the Con Ed, paid the TV, addressed me. And my sister got me my medical care so that we can go to school. And so those jobs are extremely important for me because I lived it. And I can imagine other families that are going through something similar. And so ensuring that we keep those local jobs and we give them a good facility so that they can continue to feed New Yorkers was a priority to me. And so I said, Mr. Mayor, I need $140 million. $100 million for the market and another $40 million for Hunts Point because we needed to redo certain parks and we needed lighting in Hunts Point. And he came through. But there were times when I disagreed with the administration. What I did learn, though, in this process, and you're going to learn when you become an elected official, that many times your issues, you're dealing with the city agency on its own, right? And many electeds, they do things differently. Some, when they get a no, they go straight to the top. I'm a former district manager, and because of that, I know how to navigate, talk to the right person in that city agency so that I can get something done. And that's what I was able to do. And my experience has been different than my colleagues.
You would agree, though, that there's a credibility problem there with the electorate. So if you had to give the mayor some advice on how to overcome that and for his re-election, what would you tell him?
I don't know. I mean, he's in a very tough position, that I can tell you. It's an extremely tough position. I hear it every day. I hear it when I talk to my constituents. Even when I tell these stories, I like, this is what he's been able to deliver. Yeah, but these are their issues. Those are he has, I don't know how many days. I know the early voting starts in 30 days. He has 30 days to convince New Yorkers why he's the best choice and why they should believe in the work that he has done and why they should give him another shot. And he has a tough road ahead of him.
Carlina?
For sake of time, here's what I'll say. I think all mayors are called arrogant, like, at some point. People thought Bill de Blasio was arrogant, Eric Adams is arrogant, all right, whatever. So I go to a press conference today about housing. It's to accelerate thousands of units, right? So I'm there because I support this idea that we have to accelerate housing dramatically, drastically. We are woefully behind in production of affordable housing to keep up with job growth and keep people in our communities. So we make this announcement. We're on Kent Ave. We're going to knock down an old building right there in Williamsburg and build almost 1,000 units with affordable mixed income. Fabulous. Good. Great. Congratulations. I get stuck. It's like a weird situation, right? I'm kind of stuck physically in the event. Off topic comes. So, at a press conference, they answer questions about the issue itself, immediately followed by off-topic questions. And this is when he comes out. This sort of, all I can describe it is as very antagonistic. It's the only word that can come to mind. It's the CFB is garbage. Curtis Lee was garbage. Mamdani's garbage. And then he kind of picks a fight with a journalist. And he doesn't answer her question, and he walks away. And I just thought, I love the clap back. Everybody loves a good clap back, right? You want to be that person that can say, I can say something to you in this moment where I put you right in your place. That's a very New York swagger type of situation. Having said that, you're the mayor of New York City, and like this, it's not a good look, you know? So that was my experience today where I thought, you know, he blamed the CFB, they're holding on to his money, he can't run a good campaign. The journalist, Fulana, we're gonna call her, Fulana didn't ask a good enough question, she was wrong. I'm like, oh man, this is the leader of the greatest city in the world, you know? So I think there's some issues there that people just can't get over. And then I think some of what Diana said is true. It's just that you surrounded yourself with people that might love you, that might support you, but did not have the competency and maybe the moral compass, maybe the actual information and understanding of what was required of a position of that prestige. And that showed, and it showed sometimes in criminal court. Yikes.
And let's talk about who we think will become his successor. Look, you're smiling now.
Well, the Marist poll, which is the only credible source. No, I went to Marist, that's why. And I worked at the Marist poll when I was in college, so I have a lot of love for the people sitting there with their little headsets asking you what you think. You know, we're not asking for your money, we just want your opinion. And right now it says that he is leading, Mamdani is leading in the polls. Diane and I were just at an event, Latinos, you know, talk to Zoran, I guess is what it was called. And it was led by two forces of nature, Adriano Espaillat and Nidia Velázquez, okay? Okay, exactly, right? Okay, that's it. Mommy and Papi were there, all right? Leading the conversation, okay? So we're there, and it's you know, I think that he understands the position that he's in. In fact, he made the comment, and he said, I feel like Andrew Cuomo winning by this much right now, and I don't want to feel like Andrew Cuomo on election night. So I think he understands that even though a poll looks good, he has a lot of work to do. If I were a betting woman, right, the odds are in his favor dramatically. There's a huge margin for him to win. And so we had very honest conversation and questions for him, some of which were answered very high level. And I think that, you know, when you're the candidate, you kind of have this stock answer, which is, let me just get through the election before I give you my whole policy agenda. I do think there's a lot of work to be done, and we certainly want to hear more from him about who is going to lead some of the more critical agencies in the city, like housing, like the Economic Development Committee, who's going to be the police commissioner, you know, who's going to lead something like the Department of Social Services, who's going to be deputy mayor. Maybe that comes, but I think a lot of us are waiting to hear what those leadership positions are going to look like and how aggressive his agenda is going to be, considering affordability is such a deeply complex issue.
What's your take? Because out of nowhere, this 33-year-old assembly member, he's so popular, now he became an international superstar. So what do you think he has, or why do you think he's polling so well? And I do think that the polls are underestimating the support he's going to end up getting. And I don't know if it's because of him or it's because the quality of his rivals.
I think I heard Zoran speak one time. I've met him only one time. He came to one of my events, the Longwood Festival. And I met him, I had a great conversation. Assemblywoman Amanda Septimo was a great friend of mine. She brought him over, and we spoke briefly on the issues that are affecting our communities. And it was interesting, right? Because he went on stage, and there was a huge Cuomo crowd in the crowd. And they were heckling him, and they were screaming at him. And I'm there, and he started speaking, and he did not allow the crowd to distract him from his message. And he had a very strong voice, and he spoke about affordability, and he caught everyone's attention. And I think that his messaging right now, because of cost of everything is up, the eggs, the milk, right? The bread, the rice. You know, you go to Pio Pio now to get a matador, it's $70. I don't know how many of you have gone to Pio Pio, right? It's $70. It's very expensive.
With the chicken with the green sauce?
Pio Pio
That's
in
my
your
district. Why are you talking about my district?
Yo, but the rice and beans is like $22. So
Yeah,
you're
it's
like,
very.
oh,
you know,
hold on a
it's,
second.
it's
It is
extreme-
delicious, though.
It's extremely expensive, and so, so prices are going up, but salaries are not going up, right? Con Ed, your electricity is going up, and so his messaging about affordability right now at this moment is hitting each and every one of us right where it needs to be. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent. We're all dealing with the same issues in terms of prices going up, and we're struggling, well, am I going to pay this, or am I going to pay this, or how am I going to cut corners so that I can survive, no matter where you stand politically. And I think that is what Zoran is doing, and that is what's so interesting about this race. And then you look at it, well, this is 33 years old, has very little government experience, right, as an assembly member. Are you going to be able to run? We just passed a budget of $116 billion, right? Multi-agencies. Are you going to be able to run a multi-agency, run a city, the greatest city in the world, and ensure that, number one, all your promises, you keep them, you keep New Yorkers safe, you keep our streets safe, and you continue to grow, and you keep your promises. And I think that's the biggest elephant in the room and the biggest question that many New Yorkers have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. I think that he sounds very familiar. I think he's very smart. I think he's very talented, and I think that there are differences, right? I don't think, he's not polling at 100%, obviously, right? There's a disconnect with a good portion of New Yorkers in terms of some of his policy ideas. They think they're maybe a little bit too radical. But I think, I've seen him in action, and I've actually, spoken to him several times. And one of the things that to me, that resonates with me is that he's not pretending to know the answer to all of the issues, but he's willing to think outside of the box and to stop doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And he's engaging with us in a way that is like, he's saying, I need you to be a part of this, right? In order for all of us to be effective. And that's a beautiful thing, right? Because who better, and he mentioned this the other day, he's like, who better to understand their local issues better than the council member? Why wouldn't you want to work with the council member to try to, to come to some sort of conclusion about how you can be helpful there? And so I like that he's honest. I like that he's smart. I like his enthusiasm. I like that he sees things with, from clean eyes. He hasn't been tainted in that way yet. I think that it'll be, I think that he's not going to be able to accomplish all of the things that he would want to. I'm going into that very clearly. But I think that, I plan to help him, and I know that a lot of my colleagues do as well, get as much of those things done during his time in office, because I do think that he will win.
So let's go with one of the questions that we got from the audience in advance. They're asking, how can we promote structural investments in Latinx cultural spaces? What mechanisms or policy can be implemented from the City Council?
Carlina? You were the chair of cultural.
Well, we did have unprecedented investment in our cultural institutions while I was chair, which I'm very proud of. I think, you have to have champions locally. I mean, honestly, before I became the cultural chair, I had $44 million in investment in the cultural institutions in my district. I mentioned New York, but it was Anthology Film Archives. We were bringing the Joyce Theater from Chelsea into the East Village. We were just right there on 4th Arts Block, which is East 4th Street between 2nd Avenue and the Bowery. We were investing in those spaces like La Mama and New York Theater Workshop, just really fabulous places, the Public Theater. How do we ensure that our community gets this money? Well, you really need great champions. You need a good chair. I think you need people to be able to tell that story. Why is the Nuyorican important? Many people say, well, I haven't been there in a long time. Last time I was there, it was slam night. Maybe I went there for the moth. I remember you get a beer out of a cooler for $5. By the way, they did that until they closed the doors for the groundbreaking. And it's going to be a complete transformation. So I think that if we can figure out how we can get a more steady source of income and funding from the city, which we did by baselining a lot of the funding, that was a good start. But our cultural organizations hadn't seen the same sort of investment keeping up pace with just general history and general investment. So you need really good champions locally. You need an organized campaign. It's like organizing 101. Who is your target? What are your demands? Like, you know, you really need to have that structure. And then you need to make sure that you're electing someone that recognizes arts and culture as not just something nice, but it's a necessity. I will say that I think Mamdani, he's an artist, right? He's a rapper at the very least. And I think that understanding that that is actually, you know, that's a part of his identity that will help him, I hope, promote not only investments in our cultural institutions, but historically underserved and underinvested ones, which are our Black and brown communities. Maybe he grew up with a little bit more privilege than most, but he is a Muslim born in Uganda, a brown man that had to grow up in New York City. So I feel like that's an important part of who he is, and hopefully that'll benefit us. But I also defer to my colleagues who've brought lots of money into their communities as well.
She's so shy. But bendito, la pobrecita. No, I have to give her so much credit, because to be honest with you, I didn't grow up, you know, really going to the museums or anything like that. We couldn't afford to do any of that. And so as an adult, I've learned to have an appreciation for it, but I don't have that deep-rooted, you know, understanding of all things cultural in the same way that, I don't have that same appreciation that Carlina has, but she's been the best champion for these programs. And has really, you know, fought to make, before she left the council, she did not leave until she negotiated that part of the budget. And so as part of, we are all parts of the budget negotiating team. And so we discussed these things together, but it was really a lot of her efforts that went into it. Obviously, you know, we support them, we support, you know, those efforts, because we have places like this, right? Like El Museo del Barrio that we want to be able to protect. You know, they're just pregones theater. We just were able to get pregones, which, funny story, Ralph thought the pregones was his for a long time. And he was funding them. And then one day we were sitting in a meeting and he says, no, pregones is mine. And I said, pregones is not yours, Ralph. Pregones is mine. And he was like, no, Diana, it's mine. And I said, okay, let me look. And I look up who's my representative. And I look up Pregon, it says Diana Ayala. So what does that say? He goes, but I've given them so much money. I said, well, thank you. We appreciate it. keep it coming. So I share it with him in the same way that I shared the Lower East Side with Carlina. But, you know, it's important, you know, listen, it's really important that we put in the money. And I think that Carlina's right in that the administration needs to baseline funding for cultural institutions, but we also, as you know, communities, we need to be able to come and you know, patronize them. Like, we need to come and visit them in order for them to stay alive. So we can infuse all of the money that we wanted into these organizations, but if we're not coming to visit and to support, it isn't worth funding, right? That's the way the city looks at it. They want to fund things that they think are going to be successful. But kudos to all of you. Look, this is a testament of like this beautiful space with so much history of why we do this work. And so, but I really wanted to shout Carlina out because she did a lot of that.
I think as electeds, the greatest power that we have is the power of the budget. And how do you utilize that power to ensure that programs such as the arts and theaters continue, especially in your community, but not just in your community, but supporting my colleagues who have establishments, you know, like this facility. I've never been here.
I know,
Did you know my wife worked in this building for 20 years, you know, before she was the chief of staff of Parks Enforcement. And her office was on the 3rd floor. And I was telling my staff when we drove here, I said, you know, I would come here for years to pick her up until she got her own car, and you know, and so she could get home on our own. But I've never been here. And when Diana came here, I said, Diana, I would love to have events here. And so what I've done in my time in the council in the last 9.5 years, I started what's called the Longwood Festival. Twice a year in June to open up the summer, I would hold a big festival. And what I would do is that I would partner with Hispanic Federation, allocate funding, and I would have a big concert. But I would bring big name artists where you would have to pay and go to Madison Square Garden to see, free of charge to the community. Charlie Aponte, Jerry Rivera, El Cuco, La India, Brenda K. Starr, and the list goes on and on and on. And I've done this for years just to keep the culture alive. I started off with salsa, but then I opened up my eyes. I have a lot more Dominicans than I have Puerto Ricans in my district. So I started bringing in bachata, just to ensure that we're covering, as many Latinos as we can. Something that I'm extremely proud of is funding my schools and the school programs. See, Bomba Plena is here. I've seen this man perform since I was a district manager in the community board at Casita Maria, and
A legend.
And ensuring that, organizations such as Casita Maria has the funding so that they can keep these programs. But we've also done in the council, we have what's called CASA grants, where we give, it's kind of like after school programs for our schools. If we have 20 CASA grants, 18 of my CASA grants go to Renaissance Youth Center, where they focus on the arts and music to teach our adolescents, elementary schools, the arts and how to use instruments. But what I'm mostly proud of is that I have what's called 52 Playground, which we renamed Al Quiñones Playground, for those of you that know that area. The Al Quiñones started an organization called 52 People for Progress. Back in the 80s, the South Bronx, Avenue St. John, Beck Street, it was infested with drugs. And there was a playground right there that was kind of a safe space for our kids. And Al, with a bunch of other guys in the community, formed this organization, 52 People for Playground. They kicked out all the drug dealers out of the park, and they took over that playground. Partner with Parks Department. Parks Department at the time was ignoring the park, so they would paint the park, clean it up, and ensure that the kids had a safe space. But that park had an amphitheater, and they would have salsa concerts there every summer. Al got sick in 2012, 13. He couldn't host any salsa concerts, and so for the last 6 years, I've been hosting the salsa concerts there, kind of bringing back that legacy and keeping salsa alive in our communities. So again, it's just about how do you utilize your budget to ensure that you keep culture alive in your community.
Okay. Any of you went to Puerto Rico for the Bad Bunny concert? Okay.
I love him,
It
but
was
I'm not spending
epic.
that amount of money going.
Okay, so we're running out of time, but we are going to ask a few questions from the audience. I'm going to ask you to be brief, but one of our audience members says, while Mamdani is young in age, his wisdom surpasses his time, and his eagerness to learn more about how to better serve his community is visible. How is this any different from AOC? Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who never served in office before getting to Congress, and who has been able to be a strong advocate to our community.
I think people look at experience sometimes and they just equate that with something good, and I think sometimes looking at things from fresh eyes. Like, have you ever walked with a little kid down the street that's never seen something, and now they're looking at it, and now all of a sudden you're looking at it differently too? I think that's important. And when we were talking about this race, we talk about the level of experience, and I don't think that is necessary. I think he'll have a lot of support, but I think that is I wouldn't discount people. I think our experiences as individuals, the lives that we lead, the communities that we come from, offer us enough of a infrastructure to allow us to do the work that we do. And I think I would argue sometimes even better because we understand those issues better.
I think that being an elected official and being an elected official as mayor, where you're in charge of city government, is two different things, right?
$100 billion, more than $100 billion.
Right, yes.
The budget,
right?
like you said earlier.
We're all council members. I have my staff. My staff is, and of course, we have oversight over city agencies. And, I can say what I say, whatever it is, I don't agree with you, and I want you to bring change. But when you're an elected official as the mayor of the city of New York, you have to be careful what you say, but you also have the responsibility of running city government, right? But I think what Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and Assembly member and Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani have is that they were able to get their message out to voters, and voters believed in their message. And I think that the Congresswoman still does a very good job at that. Even if we don't agree on the issue, she has a strong message and people listen to her. And I think that what we want to see is Zohran win the mayoralty is the team that he's going to have around him that are going to be efficient and are going to be able to fulfill the promises that he made to New Yorkers.
Okay. How can we protect New York City from ICE and other federal national insanity?
I will say that when I was chair of hospitals, which was so intense because it was during the pandemic. But anyway, before that, we had to have an emergency hearing because they said ICE was visibly present outside and inside of our hospitals. So myself and the chair of the immigration committee at the time, Councilmember Carlos Menchaca of Sunset Park, we had an emergency hearing. I think it's that sort of attention, the execution of one of our responsibilities, which is oversight and investigation, is an important power for us to wield and to put out there. I also think some of the things that we have done in the budget in trying to take care of unaccompanied minors, there are people as young as 4 years old trying to navigate the legal system when you have these officers right there just stoking fear. The programs that the council has funded for legal representation, I think these are the types of things. And then, of course, being outspoken about the issue and being unapologetic about our opposition to how they are militarizing, this department here in the streets of the city. One thing I'll say about Governor Hochul, I know she hasn't come up, but she was like, don't bring that here. Don't bring the National Guard. This is not that. We don't need that. We already have a lot of police, okay? But I gotta say, she sent that message, she sent it clearly, and they are not here and they are not in our streets. So I think it has to be this unified front and message.
Another question, how do we partner, how do we better partner with the Black community or Black legislators when some of our community is tied to identity politics? Who wants to take that one?
You repeat that question?
How do we better partner with the Black community or Black legislators when some of our community is tied to identity politics? So how do we partner with the Black community when Latino legislators are working together here, and then Black legislators have maybe different interests in mind? Or
Yeah, look, I can answer that. I think that has been one of the challenges for me, right? Being a Latino man in the South Bronx, and I have certain big pockets of my community that are, it's a Black community, the African American community. What I've been able to do is partner with my elected officials that are African American to try to get an understanding of how I can better serve. I mean, look, they want clean streets. Every constituent wants clean streets. They want to ensure that their apartments are safe, their landlords are taking care of them, garbage is being picked up, and they're getting all the city services that they get. And then there are other things that you do. For example, back to school events, your turkey drives, the give back to the community. You need to make sure, and at least my office, we're kind of ensuring that we're hitting all four corners of the community, that we're not, at least that I'm not just focusing on the Latino community, but I'm focusing on everyone as a whole. And I think that that's something that my office has done very well in my community.
I think I want to just add really quickly, also making sure that the community-based groups that, you know, we fund are representative of the entire, you know, community. I used to work in senior services, and it was actually for Casita Maria many years ago, and it was very Latin, you know, senior center. And the African American seniors they felt isolated. They felt like they were not welcome there. And it takes, you know, like you have to consciously, you know, remind yourself that no issues really, you know, some issues will be Latino, will be Black, will be Asian. But universally, like Ralph stated, most of the things that we all care about, doesn't matter where we come from. But there has to be, you have to ensure that those services exist in the community and put pressure on folks to really embrace, you know, holistic programming so that everybody feels welcome.
Very important, because we haven't talked about education, but why is the gap still so wide when it comes to Latino students? What is it that we are not doing that we should be doing to improve Latino students?
I don't know. Listen, I'll tell you that as a person that, you know, went to public schools here, you know, in a household that was raised in poverty, it's very difficult. You know, we don't have access to the same enrichment services. We don't have access to tutoring. You know, those things are not always readily available. And you know, I really love community schooling because it does a lot of that. It provides a lot of that. But not every school was a community school. You know, we at the council have been chipping away at that and funding to make sure that we're creating more community schools citywide so that children have access to all of that. But then you also have like other things. My son got in trouble a couple of years ago. My youngest son, he was in, I don't know, 7th grade or whatever, 6th grade. And he got in trouble with his friends, and I was called into the principal's office. And so I get there, and they're talking to the kids, and then there was this one person says to this kid, he's like, you need to get kicked out of the after-school program anyway, because you're never here on time in the morning. And he looked at her, he says, ma'am, I have to get my sisters ready to take them to school because my parents work. And she was like, that's not an excuse. And I was like, I'm not his mother, but I'm going to be his mother right now because his mother's not here. And how dare you, right? There are a lot of things that you know, Black and brown kids and kids that live in poverty experience, and you know, we need to do better about ensuring that we're providing that roundabout programming and services in the school setting, but also making, you know, free some of these services, you know, available via, you know, Zoom. I mean, like, we do so much now, you know, in that way, and I think that there are a lot of spaces that we can help, you know, our children be more successful in the school setting. Did I do good, Clarice? Okay. See, okay.
Okay, so last question. What's next? We know what's next. And are you running for another office anytime soon? You ran for Congress.
Yep.
Are you thinking about running for office in the future?
I got a nice job right now. I really enjoy myself. I get to really dive deep into the one issue that was always my priority, which is affordable housing. And there's so much to learn now that, you know, when these two, let me just say how proud I am to know you and of your work. They have to wake up every day and wear like 15 different hats. They have to be experts in education, the environment, housing, health, everything. And they do it day after day. And I'll tell you, those thank you notes don't come in as often as you think that they would, you know? But they do it because they love their community, and that's why I did it too. And now that I'm here and I get to focus on this one thing, there's so many nuances and complexities and technical knowledge that I'm like trying to grab into just a couple weeks in. And it's really where my focus is right now. So if they're running for something else, God bless them. That's a grind out there, that hustle. You got to raise a lot of money these days. There's a lot of rich people in politics.
Rafael?
Listen, when I thought I had the greatest job in the world when I was the district manager of the community board, right, really bringing change to a community I was born and raised in. Then I became a council member, and this has been the best job I've ever had. When I tell you that I'm able to move mountains, I can move mountains, and in a positive way. And to just bring something that's maybe very simple to someone may mean a lot to the other person, and it's just fulfilling, helping someone out. There's no greater feeling than you addressing someone's issue and they look you in the eye and they say thank you. And you see that effort that you put in, that call you made, that person you screamed at over the phone to bring that change, how it changed someone's life. In terms of what's next, I'm trying to figure it out. I have 3.5 months left on the council, and my focus now is basically I have some projects that I want to finish, and I want to make sure that I leave my district in good hands, and that Justin continues the work that we're doing and continue to bring positive energy and positive results to the district.
But you did try to get, didn't you run for office?
Absolutely, I ran for Bronx Borough President. It's something that I was very passionate about. In 2006, sorry, 2002, Freddie Fede ran against Mayor Bloomberg
05.
in 05, but he ran against him again in 2001, right? In 2001, he had a vacancy when Adolfo Carrion, right, took over so I was working then for an organization called Urban Health Plan, and Paloma Hernandez, president and CEO, had a great relationship with borough presidents. And I would see them come in, I was 19, 20 years old, and see the work that they were doing. And then in 2005, when Freddie Fede ran for mayor, I went to one of his fundraisers, and I was just very intrigued. Then I heard Adolfo Carrion speak, and I was just very intrigued on the work that they did. And I said to myself, one day, if I ever run for office, I want to be Bronx Borough President. And this was my shot, and I took it. It didn't work out, but I learned a lot. I learned about the Bronx, and I met a lot of wonderful people. And there are many doors and opportunities that have been presented to me right now. I just want to make sure that I make the right decision because I am raising my 11-year-old son, and I have a family at home.
So would you run again? Like in 4 years, Vanessa Gibson, the Bronx Borough President, she'll be term
at the moment,
limited.
I have no plans of running for office at the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very political response.
I mean,
Are you running yes or no? No, I don't see it, but I don't want to discount it either because you never know where you will be in a few years, and maybe you think differently. Because like Ralph, I really love this job. Like I love everything about it. I've loved getting to know so many people from all parts of the city and being able to bring about real change. And even I leave with a heavy heart because there are so many issues that impact my community that I wasn't able to address. That should have been addressed, but they were out of my control. So I'm still looking too. I'm still trying to figure out like what my next step is. And if I don't find anything before the end of the year or that I love, I will be in Elsie Encarnacion's office.
Did you hear that, Elsie?
I told her I could do it all.
Is the offer letter in?
well,
Can you help me take care of my kids, Diana?
Yeah, I could
Okay.
babysit for Carlina. Yeah.
Well, can we just give it up to them? I know that you don't hear thank you enough, but we just want to say thank you.
I love flowers so much.
but before we leave, we're going to have to sing.
Yes, and we have one more special surprise.
What?
We heard it was someone's birthday.
Thank you. I thought Carlina said that I was singing because I'm a singer sometimes. Then buste.
Happy birthday
Thank
to
you.
Diana.
Oh my God, that is so cute. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Woo! So how amazing
Thank
was
you.
this?
It was a lot of fun.
This is absolute. And can we give it up to Juan Manuel? Dr. Drum. And to all of you for coming out, we've recorded this because this is also part of our legacy, right? Like, we want to institutionalize the incredible work that you've done. This conversation really, I think, fed us all, right? And I think has given us a lot of, I think there's a call to action here, right? And it's a dialogue both to give you the support you need to continue to do the work you need to do, but for us to also hold each other accountable. So thank you for making us proud. And with that, we say, hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Thank you so much. Thank you to El Museo del Barrio.